Hey everyone, it's Paul Bertorelli reporting from a very cold and wet ramp in Everett, Washington. The airplane behind me, 1,320 pound gross, that makes it an LSA. Looks like an LSA, is an LSA, but it's an LSA with a difference. It's the Vashon Ranger, and I'm sure you've read a little bit about it. What makes this airplane different is both how it's made and how the company intends it to be used. It's kind of LSA V2O. We're going to take a flight in the airplane, but first, take a visit to the factory and see how the thing is made.
Why Vashon? The history of my successful business career has been using technology to bring the cost of something down so that the volume goes up. We did it in early PCs, in plotters, in semiconductors, but I've been interested in aviation. I'm a technology guy, semiconductors and software, and wanted to use some of that experience to help make flying a little bit cheaper. It is so expensive in constant dollars now that only old geezers like me can afford to fly, and it's a huge problem in aviation, to my thinking, that not enough youngsters are getting into it. Because I'm a float plane guy, we wanted a high wing airplane so we can make a float version of it. Our designer, or chief designer, Ken Kruger, had never done a high wing airplane before. He'd done a fair number of low wing airplanes, so he was anxious to try that different design challenge. We wanted a cantilevered wing because it makes a better float plane. The experience I've had with fiberglass is that it's hideously expensive, labor intensive, therefore it should be aluminum, and all of those things came together with the Ranger as it now sits. We wanted what I call a real airplane engine. I'm sure the Rotax is a fine motor, but we wanted it to be a more traditional airplane engine for maybe this is a mistake, the comfort of old geezers like me who are familiar with it, but all of those components, the desire to have it as a really good training airplane, made it had to be robust, all of those things came together with where we are right now. There is statistically going to be a lot of flight training done, as there will be pilot shortages developing over the next decade. So I think it needs to be a really good training airplane, a very cost-effective training airplane. We're marketing it as an adventure airplane. That light sport is never going to be a get from here to Florida kind of airplane. But to get out, have a fun weekend, a camping trip, a group fly to some new airport, an airplane that gets you back in love with flying. I am hoping that the volumes that we can achieve will be a challenge to achieve in this building. We have a total of 60,000 square feet here. Only 25,000 is now dedicated to the Ranger, but it's a challenge we'd love to meet, and if the volume is more than we can build in this room, we'll be profitable and we can afford to move to a bigger facility on an airport. My history has always been volume. It's ironic that I ran a semiconductor company in this building years ago, where one of the chips we developed was the touch sensor for watching your finger run around the cell phone. And we've sold literally hundreds of millions of that chip. We intend to ship a whole lot more airplanes than anyone else is today. Volume is going to be keyed to price, which is why we've come out with an aggressive price. As you can see looking around, we've invested in a lot of expensive CNC equipment in order to build it at the lowest possible cost. We are fairly vertically integrated with some of the expensive components, so our goal is to focus, as has been at the other companies I've worked at, on cost, so that we can bring the price down to drive volume.
If you know about these airplanes, you probably know the name Ken Kruger too. He spent some years at Vans Aircraft designing them, and now he's turned his talents to the Vashon Ranger.
So I came into this project with some design goals that John had laid down as far as wanting to really revolutionize the light aircraft industry. So safety and affordability were key requirements, and those are kind of self-explanatory why they're so important. But we also wanted to focus on systems integration and also just having an airplane that is just a good flying airplane. And John, you know, so those things could take form in really any configuration of airplane. But John is a bit of a nut about float plane flying, so we flavored it or spun those requirements and formed them into an airplane that would be very suitable for float plane flying, and also just, you know, and that extends and crosses over into a number of other missions for the airplane. So that's a large part of why we ended up with a high wing cantilever configuration. Cabin size and just basically the size of the whole airplane was something that we wanted to emphasize having a nice roomy cabin. Again, it's, having a roomy cabin is something that you enjoy every flight, and it's something that is, you know, you can't fix it if it isn't there. So we kind of erred a little bit on the side of, if anything, make it a little bit too big, but with an eye toward weight, of course. But, you know, let's face it, people are getting bigger, taller, fatter, especially us Americans. And so a big cabin was a good thing to go for. Nice, you know, big doors that we could get in and out easily through. Again, as everybody's getting a little bit older, we want something that's easy to get in and out of. So those also were parts of the overall configuration. We have a goodly amount of systems integration just right out of the box, where we have our flight instruments, our engine instruments, and all of our navigation instruments all together and talking to one another. So we've made the other parts of the airplane talk to one another. So things that are on practically every airplane: lighting, fuel pumps, flaps, trim that are electrically controlled. All of those things are coming together into a module. We call it an ACM, Advanced Control Module. And there are electronic circuit breakers in there. So we have our circuit protection in there. We have, it's fully integrated with the system, with the EFIS, so we know what's happening with each of those systems. And so we've really brought all of those things together into one integrated unit.
Because light sport airplanes have earned a bad rap for having flimsy landing gear, the company put a lot of effort into designing beefy, durable gear, including a heavy weldment for the nose gear and robust laminated fiberglass for the main gear legs. Those big tires are purposeful too. They offer a lot more stroke to absorb hard landings and rough ground where Vashon intends the airplane to operate. There's another thing going on here, and it's a big deal. The airplane has been carefully designed to be produced efficiently, and the factory has a level of automation I haven't seen elsewhere, including at the volume leader, Cirrus. Here's Scott Taylor, Vashon's production chief.
One of the things at Vashon Aircraft that we really strive for is making manufacturing and production work together. And we designed that through the engineering. From the very beginning, the engineers in the production shop worked together to try to engineer an aircraft that was easy to manufacture. One of the things we've done that's probably unique or even cutting edge for this light aircraft is we use painted skins that are pre-painted prior to manufacturing. All of the holes and dimples and countersinking are done in the tools. So when the guys get the parts onto the floor, there's no drilling required. They're actually match drilled full size and finished holes, be it countersunk or finished for a nut plate or something else. That really saves a lot of time in production. I always like to equate it back to my early boyhood when you do snap together models versus a balsa wood. You do a balsa wood model, you're cutting, you're gluing individual parts versus a snap together mark, you basically pop them out and put them together. We have made this floor, pop it out and put it together. Paul, one of the ways we accomplish some of these finished parts is we use a turret punch. We spent almost a year and a half working with the manufacturer, working with mills with our metal, so that We actually have protective coatings on our metal so that we can run it through the turret punch and not scratch the finish. We actually have custom designed tools to be able to actually hold a tight tolerance on our hole tolerance and our dimpling tolerance. Using the turret punch has saved hundreds of man hours out on the floor because the machine will, we can walk away and leave it operating overnight sometimes if necessary. So taking labor out of the build process has been huge, using some of this automated equipment to complete finished parts that go on the airplane.
For the time being, Vashon builds its airplanes at the small factory in Woodinville where Dynon is located, and finishes the assembly at Everett, Washington, right across the field from Boeing's giant wide-body factory. Eventually, Vashon plans a new facility at nearby Arlington, Washington. On a blustery, rainy day, not that unusual for the Northwest, I flew the Ranger with Marketing Director Amy Bellisheim. What's immediately noticeable are the large doors and the wide cabin, 45 inches at the widest by my measure. Also, if you want to sleep in the airplane, the two seats tilt forward to open up the entire cabin floor. From the aft bulkhead to the sticks, it's 78 inches, and that will accommodate 6-footers easy. But you'll have to offload all your stuff to make room. Unusual for any airplane, much less a light sport, are 5-point harnesses with an easy quick release. That's a plus. No surprise that light sport airplanes that weigh about the same and have about the same horsepower, in this case 100 horsepower, perform about the same. They cruise at about 100 knots or so on 4 or 5 gallons an hour, and that's what the Vashon does, although the POH says it will do up to 114 knots at higher fuel burns. Weight-wise, because of the Continental engine and the extra heft Vashon put into the structure, the Ranger is heavy as LSAs go. Its empty weight is 882 pounds, just 8 pounds less than the maximum allowable for an LSA. Useful load is 438 pounds, so with 2 people aboard, there's capacity for 16 gallons of gas. With full fuel, that's 28 gallons, you could haul 2 light people, or 1 and all the baggage you could stuff into the thing. Or, and let's be honest here, girls, you could just fly at 50 or 100 pounds over gross, which is what much of LSA-dom actually does. I make no moral judgments, but I am merely apprising you of reality.
And you're in the white arc, so you could dump the flaps at any time.
Okay. Only a little bit of a pitch-up moment with the flaps. And let's see, what is flaps full? Is 40?
Yeah, we got 20 and 40, so we're at 40
okay.
now. And we're about 65.
All right.
So you'll see the airplane is pretty responsive on the controls, even at really slow flight.
I'm down to 55, and it's got very good roll control.
Yeah.
Okay, so now we're going into stall. We've got full flaps.
Okay. So you hear the AOA?
And where's the AOA indicator?
It's on the pitot tube.
And where is it displayed?
I don't think it is displayed.
Oh, okay.
You just
So
hear the audible.
Okay, so
yeah.
We're hearing the audible now, a little chirp. And does that go to full when it's at the higher AOA?
I think it has 2 settings, kind of similar to a stall warning horn.
Yeah, the tone picks up.
So you'll feel the airplane kind of buff it tiny bit, and that's it. It'll just hold this. There you go. Now it won't do anything except...
Yeah, it's got a parachute mode like most fat wings do.
Yeah.
Okay, so I have the stick full back, going into a little oscillation, but it's not falling off or breaking on either side.
Yeah.
And I'm not using any rudder to hold the wings level.
Yeah, the ball is centered. We're not touching the rudder at all.
And we got an indicated descent rate of about 700 feet a minute. Okay, we'll recover from that.
Okay.
Ken Kruger told me he wanted a pleasant flying airplane, and he built one. Unlike most LSAs I fly, the control forces aren't scary light, but about like you'd find in a post-war tail dragger. The airplane needs very little rudder, if any, in normal flight. The Ranger is unusually trim stable for a light sport. I set it up for 65 knots indicated on final, and not that carefully either. It nailed the speed like it was on rails. With that beefy landing gear, I wonder if it would survive a no-flare landing by a brain-numbed student. Ms. Bellashine was intrigued, but we demurred in testing the theory. Let's talk a little bit about configuration here.
Okay.
This panel has two of the displays, and the option will be one or two, correct?
Yes, so you can either get one HDX or one touch, or you can get two HDX. So we're in the top of the line model here.
What does having the additional display panel give you?
It's nice to have, especially if you're doing flight training, it's nice to have it if you want to put your moving map on one side and have it easier to see, and then maybe put your flight instruments and your engine gauges on one. It's just easier to see everything with two screens.
And so what's the price delta between 1 and 2?
It's about $99.5 is the base model with one, and then $114.5. There's some other things that you get. Obviously, we have LED lights and some other small things, but mainly it's the avionics difference.
And are most of the buyers going for 2, you said?
Most of the buyers want 2 because the price is already so low, and I mean, it's really cool to fly with 2 screens. Yeah, you have autopilot, and by the way, autopilot comes with a base model, so everybody who purchases a Ranger will get autopilot.
Okay, and this is a pretty sophisticated autopilot. It has a level button, I noticed.
Yes.
So let's try that out.
Yes.
So the autopilot's on all the time, isn't it? Even though it's not engaged.
Correct.
So if I hit level now.
There we go. And then you'll see your instruments right here turn blue.
Okay.
Departure 16.
So that means if you ever get yourself stuck in the clouds and don't know which way is up, hit the level button. It'll bring you straight and level. And then it's on now for good until you figure yourself out where you're at.
Adding options to the airplane, are there any?
Well, we do have the exterior wrap option, so that's one thing. That's a pretty big thing. You can buy the airplane totally white if you don't like our graphics. There's different options you can put on there. Obviously the screens. We had an option for a second radio, but we decided to remove it because you don't really need 2 radios.
Now, it won't be obvious. We should talk a little bit about that. Saw the exterior views of the airplane.
Okay.
That's not paint. Explain what it is.
So it's a premium vinyl wrap, and it's from a company in Seattle that also does car wraps. So you've seen them driving around, and it's an Avery Dennison premium lightweight wrap design that they use, and it's really easy to manage. To clean it, you basically use car wash cleaner, and they can put a special polish on it to keep it looking good, and that usually lasts for about 10 years.
And then what happens when you replace it? It just peels off?
Yeah, if you get a little piece that you want to remove and replace, they can customize it to where you can only get that piece done, or you can remove the whole thing. And basically how you do it is with a blow dryer, and it's just, you put heat on it basically, and it will peel off. It won't destroy the paint or the airplane itself.
So we've seen, saw the factory views, all those airplanes, the skins are obviously already painted and the airplane's built, and when it's completed it's white. Can those also get a conventional paint job if the customer wants that?
I don't think so, and I'm going to say no because we already get the pre-painted aluminum white, so it comes white, and it's really pretty white. I mean, it's a really nice quality paint. So painting is heavy. It adds a lot of weight, and so I mean, technically, I guess you could paint it, but we're not going to offer it.
Amy, is Vashon going to develop a training program for this airplane with syllabus and all of that?
Oh yeah, we're working on that right now, and that's my department because I'm an instructor and I absolutely love teaching people to fly, especially this airplane because it's really fun. So we are working. I do have a flight training supplement that I'm happy to share with you and kind of give you an idea of how we're doing it.
What will that training program look like? I mean, this is going to be a clean sheet opportunity here. So is it going to be computer-oriented training? How will it be instructed?
So technically, for insurance purposes, Ranger buyers will be required to do 10 hours of flight training. It's included in the price of the airplane. Anything above and beyond the 10 hours, they would just pay a normal instructor. But basically, it's going to be a little bit of online training, and flying with one of our instructors here, and we'll help with the written, and we can do sport pilot and private pilot.
Okay, well, thanks for the demo, Amy. It was fun.
Yeah, it was awesome. Thanks for flying.
Paul Bertorelli reporting for AvWeb and Aviation Consumer. You can find a full report on the Vashon Ranger in the May 2018 issue of Aviation Consumer. Thanks for watching.